I will fight to the end. Doesn't matter what the world brings against me. I will fight to the end.
Good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I would also like to thank WNTW 820 AM The Answer for the opportunity to provide this public service to you each week. I'm Senator Amanda Chase, your weekly radio show host. I serve as your state senator in the 11th Senatorial District, which includes all of Amelia and Colonial Heights and most of Chesterfield. My office is in Richmond, not D.C., by the way, where I meet with constituents in our district each Tuesday and Thursday while we're out of session. In session, I'm in my office 5 days a week and at your service. So many of the topics that we will address on our show are actual issues and constituent concerns that have been brought to my attention, and it's been every week is a full week. It's so hard to decide what to talk about because there's so many issues coming up. If you have a question about today's topic, I invite you to call in. The number is 804-454-1366, or you may email your questions to info@amandachaseforsenate.com, and we're going to do our best to answer your questions on the show. So let's get started. Today we're going to be discussing the Convention of States. What is Convention of States, which is also, by the way, called Article 5 Convention? To talk about that today, I have Tamara Colbert, who is the National Media Director, Convention of the States Action. And then also I will have Robert Brown, who's a constitutional scholar. Before we begin, I want to share my personal experience with Convention of States. And basically, some of you are like, well, what is that? There are a number of constituents. Many people are concerned about our runaway federal government. It's, as you know, spending is out of control. You know, at the state level, we are by law required to balance our budget. At the federal level, obviously that's not happening. In fact, our debt is completely out of control. And so you've got concerned constituents, concerned government officials who are just, pulling their hair out, trying to figure out what can we do to rein this in. And I tell you, it is a concern, and I appreciate both sides of the issue. It's not an easy topic to discuss, and you have people on both sides of the issue that feel very strongly, even in conservative communities. You can't find agreement. So it's very complicated. But I thought it was important to bring to you all a little bit. You're going to hear both sides. The first half of the show, we're going to talk about support of what it would mean to have a convention of states and what that would entail. And then on the flip side of that, what are the cons against it? Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you, as I always am. I cut to the chase. When I was asked to attend the first ever simulated Convention of States, which was sponsored by a great group called the Citizens for Self-Governance. And I would like to thank, by the way, Citizens for Self-Governance for hosting and sponsoring this event. It was very educational, informative. It was held in Colonial Williamsburg, September the 21st through the 23rd. It was a 2-day of simulation, and I was one of 4 Virginia legislators who served as one of the 4 commissioners representing Virginia. So I really appreciate them for including me in that, because honestly, I went into this as a skeptic because of my past experience in dealing with Republican state conventions, which I've experienced and been a part of for about 10 years. So as I mentioned, I was one of 4 commissioners. I served with the Honorable Vance Wilkins, who was former Speaker of the House, Delegate Jim LeMunyon, and Delegate Scott Lingenfelter. And they had 3 different committees. There were it was called Fiscal Restraints Committee. There was a Federal Legislative and Executive Jurisdiction Committee, which I served on, and a Term Limits and Federal Judicial Jurisdiction. And so it was very interesting. And so during the course of those 2 days, we worked. It was just like being in session. Every state had, I would say on average, 3 to 4 legislators or representatives from their state. And we went through the simulated convention process. Now, let's see if Tamara is on the phone. Is Tamara there and on the line? Tamara, are you there?
Hi there.
Hi, Tamara. Thank you so much for joining us today. You know, I really, Tamara's a very busy lady. She's the National Media Director for...
Well, I wear two hats as well, Senator. I actually am the co-director for the state of Texas. So, you know, I'm a glutton for punishment for liberty. What can I tell you?
Absolutely. And you're also responsible, I understand, for coordinating a team of more than 50 volunteer media liaisons representing all 50 states.
Yes, ma'am.
In addition, she's the principal contact person for national media outlets with more than 18 years of public relations and communications experience. Mrs. Colbert is the consummate authority in her field. Her media experience includes working and leading communication teams in more than 70 countries domestically. Her work has involved many national communications efforts and events. Now, with the Convention of States project, she brings a unique set of media and public relations skills together to help facilitate and elevate a constitutional dialogue in America. That type of dialogue could change the course of history by educating citizens and legislators on the Article 5 process, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, which is a solution that's bigger than the problem of an overreaching federal government. Tamara Colbert holds a Bachelor of Arts in Communication and Media Studies from La Sierra University, Riverside, California. And in 2004, she received a Master's of Art degree in Business Management from the University of Redlands, Riverside, California. Shortly after the Convention of States was founded as a grassroots organization, the Citizens for Self-Governance, Tamara Colbert was named the first COS director of the state of Texas. And after bringing on a co-director for Texas, she continues to travel throughout the state giving speeches and recruiting volunteers. Today, after 3 years, Texas can boast more than 100,000 active volunteers and the official endorsement of both Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
We've been a little busy in Texas.
You always are.
Oh, my
You
goodness.
always are, Tara. So let me tell you, these breaks come up on us really quickly. So
Yes, ma'am.
I'll try to give you some cues to let you know. I'll just say thank you. We're
Yes,
going
ma'am.
to the break, but
Sure.
let's just tell the folks. Now we're talking to our listeners who may not have even heard. Like, what is a Convention of States? Can you explain that first of all to our audience?
So the Convention of States project was founded as a project to educate. It's a strictly educational process for both citizens and legislators on how Article 5 of the Constitution works. And Article 5, in school, we're only ever taught that Article 5, there's one way to propose amendments. And that is the only way it's ever been done, which has been by the Congress. But in Article 5, Section 2, Colonel George Mason, it really is his gift to us today. Colonel George Mason made sure, and it was unanimously voted in, that the states, through their legislatures, had an opportunity, not if, but when the federal government got too big for its britches, that the states could come together, could convene to discuss solutions for fixing what ails America in the form of proposing amendments. So it's essentially an opportunity for the states to legally and constitutionally get together to talk about solutions for making our country incredible and fixing those things, structural issues, so that America can figure all of that out. And the beauty of this is that, as you found out, Senator, in Virginia, working with all these other states, that it wasn't about what differences, that everybody gravitated to the differences, but this is about bringing people together to find out what do we agree upon, and then using that as the starting point. And I love to tell people I have the best job in the country because I get to work with amazing legislators like you, but I also get to work with everyday Americans who just want the federal government out of their lives. I'm sure, Senator, you hear that every single day in what you do for Virginia as well.
Well, I tell you, Tamara, one of the biggest frustrations that I hear from the constituents and the business owners in my district is their frustration with the federal government and the constant overreach and what affects everyone. There's a lot of people out there that are now forced to work part-time, and we were just talking about this a few minutes ago in our office. that are forced to work part-time, 30 hours or less, because
Yes.
the federal overreach of the government with the insurance and requiring I keep saying legislators, requiring businesses to have this additional insurance that was pushed and forced on us, when we should be promoting states' rights. States' rights should prevail over federal.
Absolutely. And this is the beauty, Senator, of Article 5, right? Because it enables the states constitutionally to stand together against federal overreach. So when our national government was originally constructed, right, it was so that the federal powers were very
Tamara,
few
we're going
and
on to a
defined.
break. Hold that
Yes,
thought.
ma'am.
Y'all stay tuned. We'll be back in 4 minutes with Tamara Colbert. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. This is State Senator Amanda Chase, your weekly radio show host. You have joined us for our town hall and radio show each Thursday, and today we are talking about the Article 5 Convention, and I have Tamara Colbert, who is the Convention of States Director for the state of Texas. And we were just talking a little bit about her role there. We were also talking a little bit about there's more than one way to produce an amendment. And the Convention of States has a strategy to utilize Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution to limit the power of the federal government and its intrusions of state rights, which kind of ticks me off when that federal government intrudes on
Yes.
on what we at the state are trying to do in our civil liberties. I can say that word. Nationwide, your grassroots organization has 2.1 million volunteers from all 50 states. So the big question that always comes up is, what about a runaway convention? How many times have you heard that?
Oh, I've heard, if I had $1 for every single time that I heard that, I'd be on a beach somewhere in an island in the South Pacific. Here's the thing. Let's cut to the chase, Senator Chase. I love the name of your of your show because it really does enable us to get to the heart of the matter. For 30 years, 80% of Americans say they want term limits on the Congress. For 30 years, 80% of Americans have polled say they want a balanced budget amendment. However, after 30 years of Americans telling congressional leaders what they want, the Congress has never, ever changed one thing. This is why now is the time, because we know that a president does not have the power to fix the structural issues. We have, every day that our Congress is in session, a runaway federal government because nothing has changed. And, the perfect exclamation point on this was that President-elect Trump, one of his campaign issues he ran on, was recommending term limits for the Congress. And within 24 hours of him being elected, Senator Mitch McConnell said, I have a message for Mr. Trump, that term limits isn't on my agenda for the next Senate session, and that's why we have elections. So right there, within 24 hours, the president-elect hasn't been sworn in, and we're already hearing pushback from the elite ruling class in D.C. that they don't want that. Of course they don't. It makes them, gives them a fear of irrelevance, right? And so the fact is that these folks, they like the power that they have. They're chauffeured to their offices in D.C. And so this is why we have Senator Tom Coburn, who quit the Senate because it was gridlock. And the only thing, and he tells this to everybody, the only thing that the legislators on Capitol Hill were worried about was their next election. And that's pretty sad. Senator Chase, I know that I would trust you going to a convention to discuss real solutions with legislators from Hawaii and Montana and Texas to say, okay, what do we agree upon? And I was at that simulated convention as well, interviewing and talking with legislators, and the one thing that, whether they were Democrat or Republican, told me that you all agreed upon was that the federal government was broken, that things had gotten too big, that they had taken that power away from the states. And here's the beauty. If we want to reinforce the 10th Amendment, then the states must stand together against this federal government overreach, because what we have is that the creation is now overtaking the creator, and the creator is the states. The states created the federal government, and so we can't have that. So it's time for the states to get together. It's time for the citizens of those states to be able to say, yep, we are going to take care of this, and we know exactly how to do it. Yeah. Now, you're right. Our opponents are going to tell you that it's going to be a runaway. But you know what? Here's the beautiful thing. For 229 years, we have had successful conventions all over this country. And you know what? Things get heated. Even at the simulated convention, there was rousing discussion. But you know what? There is a civility and a decorum that legislators understand, even if they're from different sides of the aisle. And so our opponents are going to say, that convention's going to run away. The different thing is that our opponents will never tell you they have a solution. They have no solutions for fixing what needs to be fixed at the federal level. And since our Constitution was ratified, there's been more than 11,800 amendments that have been proposed. And we only have 27 that have ever been ratified. And so we know exactly what a convention would look like. We know how the rules would operate. And the risk to us to do nothing is much greater than convening as the states to talk solutions.
Now, one thing that I would like to add in there is at the state Senate, many of you all know I introduced a term limit bill in the General Assembly here at the state level, and that will be reintroduced this year, which is a limit of 12 years in the House or the Senate. So I do stand very strongly on term limits, and I've put that in, and even have co-sponsors this year, which I'm really excited about, because it's one thing to put in a term limit bill, it's another thing to get sponsors on that. And yes. Senator Glenn Sturdivant is supporting me, as well as Delegates Pogge and some other folks out there. But so one of the observations that I had while I was at the convention, there's still many unknowns. One thing that I noticed is that most of us who were there were conservatives. Now, yes, let's just cut to the chase here.
Yes.
That's not going to happen in a real convention. You're not going to have people with that similar of an ideology. We were all conservatives. We actually all got along very well, and almost so well it scared me. I'm like, this is not reality, because this may be my first year in office, but and I everyone knows, I had a terrific first year in the Senate, and I have so much respect for my colleagues. And even though we disagree on many things, like you said, there is a decorum. But we are different. I mean, you've got different in the state Senate and the legislature. You have ideology, which is completely opposite. That was very different in that simulated convention. That's one thing that I would say was like, this is almost too good to be true.
Well, here is why this is important and why the time is now. Because the politics in the states, now Convention of States is a bipartisan organization. We have efforts happening right now in all 50 states, including the 8 states we've already passed. We are continuing to educate citizens and working with legislators in those states. But on November 8th, guess what? 33 states have both houses controlled by Republicans, and the 34th state, which is the magic number to get to convention, is Nebraska. And even though they're unicameral and they call themselves not even bipartisan, no politics per se for Nebraska, we know that a majority of their senators in Nebraska are conservative. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the time is right now to act for these states to get together.
Thanks,
to say
Tamara.
We can put the brakes on the federal government.
Tamara, thanks so much for your time today. Convention of States Director of State of Texas in favor of a Convention of States. Stay tuned.
till the end. Doesn't matter what the world means against me.
Thanks for tuning in. This is State Senator Amanda Chase here with Robert Brown, who is the author of the DVD series, The Constitution is the Solution. Robert Brown is best known for his lectures on the Constitution. He's produced 6 of his lectures as a DVD series known as The Constitution is the Solution, which is gaining popularity nationwide. It's a great Christmas gift, right, Robert?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Nothing better than giving the gift of freedom.
Exactly. Well, listen, after viewing just 2 of these lectures, a constitutional attorney from New Jersey remarked, I studied constitutional law under one of the most outstanding constitutional lawyers, law professors in America, and I have learned more from these 2 DVDs than I did from the professor. A popular constitutional speaker, he has lectured for many liberty-minded organizations throughout the country. He's also a former coordinator and regional field director for the John Birch Society. Mr. Brown and his family reside near Billings, Montana. Is that correct, Montana?
Yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for coming on the show. So Robert, convention promoters point out it will take 38 states to ratify proposed amendments. Will this safeguard be enough to stop harmful amendments from being ratified?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we can look at history for that one. We've seen several amendments that have passed that hurdle that have been harmful. I'd point out the 16th and 17th Amendments in particular. One other concern there, though, is that the 14th Amendment wasn't intended to do what it has done, that being creating a birthright citizenship concept that was an unintended consequence. So one of my real concerns here is as we add new amendments, are we certain we're not going to just create more problems? Mm-hmm. You were talking to your guests in the first half hour about the convention simulation that you were able to attend. And really this is enough subject matter for another show. But there were a number of amendment proposals that came out of this very conservative convention that as a constitutional scholar I have really big concerns about because they undermine various parts of the Constitution without meaning to. I have several friends that attended and felt like everyone was there was very well intended. But unless we truly understand the inner workings of the Constitution and the reasons for what's in it, we're very likely to do damage to it as we try to correct things.
You know, that's one of my biggest concerns is unintended consequences. I mean, the people who are pushing the Convention of States are great people. I mean, I have so much respect for them. And you know, there's scholars that don't even completely agree on this, but one of my concerns as a legislator is always what are the unintended consequences? And secondly, you know, we already have a Constitution, and the federal government isn't even following that, so why would they follow this?
Absolutely, absolutely. My other real concern is that the whole convention concept does not address the root of the problem, and I want to maybe come to that after our next break and focus on what I feel is the real problem and the real solution. I'll give one example, though, from the convention simulation suggestion. To preface this, I assume you're probably familiar with Article 1, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, where it declares that all legislative power, all lawmaking power is given to...
Okay, he's coming back on. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, Robert, are you there?
Yes, sorry, we got cut off there.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened, but I'm glad you're back.
Thank you. I was just stating that all legislative power is given to Congress. And yet, one of the amendment proposals from this convention simulation talks about any laws that are made by Congress, the President, or administrative agency. If you were to pass an amendment that addresses those, you're actually authorizing them. You're actually authorizing the President or the administrative agencies to create law. Now, they do so to some degree right now, kind of getting past that rule. But this would constitutionally legitimize the act of the President creating law and bypassing Congress. So that's one of my many concerns I see of unintended consequences that can easily get through in a well-meaning and good-sounding amendment proposal.
You know, it's very interesting, and we're getting ready to go to a break, but you'll have plenty of time when we come back. We've actually got 30 seconds to the break. But when we come back, we will talk specifically about that. And, unintended consequences is a big concern. And the reason that I have not, to this point, come out in support of the Convention of States project. But stay tuned. Robert Brown's going to be with us. The author of The Constitution is the Solution. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 4 minutes. This is State Senator Amanda Chase with constitutional scholar Robert Brown on the phone, and we are talking today about Convention of States. Robert, let me ask you this. Everyone agrees the federal government is completely out of control. A number of my friends have left Congress because they're so frustrated they don't feel like they can get anything done. What is the solution? How do we rein in the federal government given what we have? Where we have legislators if you look at the regulation, Congressman Bratt has been on our show talking about the tremendous amount of regulation that has passed by executive orders and overreach. What is the solution here?
Yeah, absolutely great identification of the problem there. Like I was saying before, all lawmaking, even if it's regulatory law, should be in the hands of Congress alone, according to the beginning of the Constitution. So the real solution, though, I firmly maintain, cannot be achieved by an amendment to the Constitution because it does not address the problem. And I think the easiest way to identify what the real root of the problem is that we're facing is to give a little bit of a glimpse into history of when we did not have this problem as a nation. For that, I'm going to share with you a quote from Alexis de Tocqueville, a French philosopher and author who came to America in around 1830, and his purpose was to discover what made America great. How were we able to become this worldwide success almost overnight? And what he pointed to as our great strength then, he said, that in America, every citizen is taught the history of his country and the leading features of its Constitution. It's extremely rare to find a man who's not perfectly acquainted with all these things, and a person wholly ignorant of them is sort of a phenomenon. Now compare that to today. Does that sound like today? Everyone understands the Constitution thoroughly.
I would probably have to give you an on that. Definitely
Sorry,
no.
not even close. In fact, I would have to say the same statement in reverse. Today it's extremely rare to find anyone that's vaguely familiar with the Constitution, and someone wholly educated on it is sort of a phenomenon. And that's really the problem. They get away with ignoring the rules of the Constitution because we, the people, don't know.
For some reason, I think we keep getting disconnected. That's okay. He's going to call in. So since the Civil War, I'll just add this out there. Since the Civil War, there has only been one Convention of States, which was a 17-state gathering in 1922. And so Robert Brown is talking about basically we have these rules, we're not following them, we're ignoring the rules, and it takes knowledge of the everyday average citizen understanding the Constitution, understanding their history, to get in there and enforce what we know are our rights. We understand the rules. It takes an enforcer. I think we have Dr. Robert Brown back on the phone. Are you there?
Yes, I'm back.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's going on.
Switching phones. Hopefully that'll work better. We'll see how this goes.
Okay, great. No problem.
See, that what I was saying, just as we got cut off there, is really what I feel the root of the problem. The American people don't know the rules, so therefore we cannot hold our elected officials accountable to them. Right. It's really that simple. I appreciate that your previous guest was talking about their organization as an education project. That's really what we need to be working on, is helping people become acquainted with the limits of power as defined by the Constitution. What is the proper jurisdiction of the federal government? How many of us can quickly point to where in the Constitution that's found and defend it?
You know, that's exactly right. And to your point, I was attending a Republican state convention, and it was actually helping a statewide lieutenant governor campaign. And I completely shut down that convention for 3 hours because they were not following the rules. And, imagine that. So
that gives you a lot of faith in how well a convention could go, doesn't it?
Yeah, and honestly, my real life experience in dealing with convention after convention, now these were not Article 5 conventions, as we mentioned earlier. One of those has not been held since back, gosh, what date did I saw it in my notes here a minute ago? Was it 1920? Is that what it was? I saw it in there. It's been a long time. And so, but we've had Republican state conventions, which is what I'm most familiar with. I mean, we have those numerous times over the years, and I've seen at least two of those, what would appear to be shenanigans going on, and which in one of those I actually shut down for 3 hours, and I will take full ownership of that. But I thought the people were being disenfranchised because the rules were not being followed. They did not have complete information when they were voting, and after many of the counties had voted, then they flashed on the screen the full information, the data that had who.
Wow.
There were 7 lieutenant governor candidates. They had listed the names of each of the lieutenant governor candidates, and this particular candidate they put at the bottom of the list. There were no numbers, so people didn't know the percentages until half the audience had voted, until half the convention had voted. So this is very this has been very real to me, and why I really wanted to be a part and appreciate being involved with that simulated convention, because there are differences, but there are also many similarities, just the nature of a convention. And so you have to have some type of appeal process.
Absolutely.
And like you said, educating the public. We've got to do a better job. So tell me, what do you think is our long-term solution? How do we educate the public that's out there? They're so busy. They're so stressed out. They always, one of my common phrases, we're working 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
Yes.
What can they do?
One of the things that we've found is that a well-educated team of about 500 people are enough to influence the votes and political opinions in a congressional district. And so you get that many people, and that's why I created my 6-lecture series on the Constitution, is to help a core team become thoroughly familiar with the details they need to know to reign in the federal government.
Can you give us a website? Can you give us a website?
That can actually be purchased on JBS's website, jbs.org. You go to their shop section and you can find the Constitution is the Solution video series. You can also find it on YouTube. Just look up the Constitution is the Solution. You'll find 6 lectures under that title.
Okay, very good. So those of you who still are looking for stuffing stalkers. Stalkers, I can't say it. Say that 1,200 times. Definitely that's something to look at. I'm a former home educator. We homeschooled our kids for about 9 years. And this is very important. It's the fabric of our nation. We've got to do a better job educating our kids. Robert, thanks so much for coming on our show today. Stay tuned for the wrap up. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Thanks, Robert Brown. Well, welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Amanda Chase here on WNTW 820, The Answer, and we're here at the final wrap-up, and I really appreciate constituents coming to my office and meeting with me, expressing both ways. I have a lot of people who are supporting Convention of States project. I have a number of people who are against the Convention of States project, so I hope you all have enjoyed today's discussion. I tell you, we could spend days and days discussing both the pros and the cons on this. And I think the important thing is that we continue to listen to each other and that we continue these discussions. And, if you're on one side and someone else disagrees with you, just listen. Listen to what they have to say. I think we have to listen to each other and try to work together. I think it's when we think that we're the experts on it and we shut other people down and don't listen to their experience or what they may have read or seen, that's when we get into trouble. So I would just encourage those of you who are out there who feel very strongly one way or the other, we just have to, right now during this coming session, we need to focus on that which unites us. Let's be honest, we've got a Democratic governor and fortunately Republican House and Senate. I don't know that this would be something that it's going to come before the Senate this year. There was discussion that it was, but I heard earlier today that it may not because they don't have the votes I'm not in support of the Article 5 convention at this particular date. However, I would encourage those of you who are in support of it, continue working on it. I mean, my hope is that President Trump gets in there. I know it's, earlier we were talking about how many years, the federal government has been out of control and some issues we've had. But I would also add to you that the American public has just woken up to what is going on, probably in the last 7 years. And people are not going to stand by for that anymore. And we're holding our elected leaders accountable. And if you look at what happened in Dave Bratt's election and my election, the people are awake. They understand what's going on. They see it. They're going to continue to elect people that represent the people and put the people above the special interest groups and actually represent the voice of the people. I do want to thank the Convention of States again for having me at that event. They took a real risk at me coming to that event, and I really do appreciate them coming because they knew. And I was very forthright with them. I said, look, I have to tell you my experience. I already have experience with runaway conventions, at least 2. So, and I said, but I would like to learn more about it because it is important to my constituents. And like I said, I've met with a number of you who feel very strongly one way or the other. So I'm going to continue to educate myself, and as things move forward and progress, I think it's important that we continue to learn more. And I think both sides of the issue would say the one thing that we can do is educate ourselves more about the Constitution, find out what our rights are, and I think it would be great to make sure that we're educating our kids, make sure they understand the Constitution. Stay tuned. Next week, next Thursday, we have another great show for you.